The structure of language, syntax, word order, and constituents. Let's look at syntactic phenomena. We need to know what things are important in describing our knowledge of sentence construction. Well, we know that word order is important. Given 3 words, not all arrangements are acceptable. So let's say we have the words children, puppies, and love. We could say children love puppies, and we can say puppies love children. Puppies children love. Yes, sometimes. Children puppies love. Sometimes. Love puppies children? No. Love children puppies? No. So let's look and see why it is that word order is important. We'll get to that in just a little bit. So here we've got 2 sentences. The dog chased the cat, and the cat chased the dog. In both of these, we can see who is doing what to whom. So in the dog chased the cat, the dog is doing the action of chasing, and the cat is what he is running after. In the cat chased the dog, we can see that it's the cat who is doing the action of chasing, and the dog who is being chased. Now in English, we essentially have subject, verb, object, word order, SVO. So the word that shows up to the left of the verb, in other words, before the verb, is usually the subject, the one that's doing the action. And the word that shows up, the noun that shows up after the verb, is the one that is receiving the action, the direct object, sometimes the indirect object of the action. But then we get weird sentences, like this one. What about the dog was chased by the cat? So here we have the dog in subject position, but the dog is not the one doing the chasing. The cat is the one doing the chasing. So what's going on here? In addition to describing word order, a syntax for English has to account for how 2 sentences that on a superficial level seem to be radically reordered actually have the same meaning. So if we look at the dog chased the cat, and the cat chased the dog, and then we have the sentence, the dog was chased by the cat, we see that the dog was chased by the cat means the same thing as the cat chased the dog, but the order of the words is completely different. So what's going on? Well, this is a phenomenon called passivization, where things can be moved around, but there are specific rules for it. Let's continue. So one thing that's important is we're not dealing with individual words. We're dealing with constituents. And constituents are generally, think of them as giant Lego blocks. They're things that we use to build a sentence. And the constituents can be a single word or it can be a collection of words, but they are words that act together. So, for instance, let's look. Lee left. Lee is a constituent. That's the subject. It's just one word. If we say the person whose house was broken into by that notorious band of thieves left. That whole great big, the person whose house was broken into by that notorious band of thieves, that's a lot of words. But that's one constituent, and it's the subject of the sentence. Just like Lee is the subject of the sentence. So words that are working together as members of the same phrase are called constituents. Again, think of them as Lego blocks and think of what goes into that Lego block. So constituents demonstrate that sentences have an internal structure. Sentences in English are not just put one word after the other, okay? They're really built, again, with these Lego blocks of constituents, and they have an internal structure. And the job of syntax is to discover what that internal structure is. So how do you know? Well, it's your native intuition. If you're a native speaker of a language, you know how it works. So if we look at a sentence such as, an old friend sent a gift to the kids, okay, what are the bits and pieces that are important? Well, if we look at, we'll put brackets around the important constituents. An old friend, a gift, the kids. These are all noun phrases. Noun phrases are nouns and any adjectives or determiners that go with them. Okay, so an old friend. So friend has an as the determiner, which is the article, and old as the adjective. A gift, gift and the kids, kids and the. Okay, so these are constituents, but let's look a little bit more. We know that these are the nouns, okay, but what's the relationship of an old friend to a gift and the kids? Well, if we look a little bit more, we could see we keep an old friend there, okay? Then we've got sent and a gift, and then we notice that to the kids goes together, okay? Because they're the ones that are receiving the gift. And they're what's called an indirect object, so, and a prepositional phrase. So here we have a preposition to that is followed by the noun phrase, the kids. And then we have a whole verb phrase, which is sent a gift to the kids. Okay? And the sentence is made up of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. An old friend sent a gift to the kids. An old friend sent a gift to the kids. And you can see how the bracketing goes. So basically you count the brackets. You have an old friend, a gift, the kids. Inside the black brackets, you have each of the noun phrases. Okay? We've got the red phrase, the red bracket here, okay, gives us to the kids. Then we've got the green bracket, gives us the verb phrase, sent a gift to the kids. And then we have the final red bracket gives us the entire sentence. Okay, so we usually don't worry about the whole sentence brackets. Usually when we're drawing these things, we are concerned more about the internal structure, and that's how the bracketing works on these things. So we can see an old friend, this is one constituent. A gift is one constituent, but sent a gift to the kids is also a constituent. Each one of these things that is bracketed is a constituent. And what you can see is that constituents can be embedded. One can be inside the other. So the kids is a noun phrase that is inside to the prepositional phrase, and all of that is inside the verb phrase. Sent a gift to the kids. Okay. And sometimes we have ambiguous strings. And the nice thing is that the internal structure can tell us how it is that we can separate these things out. So look at this. We've got word order here, Chinese art expert. So are we talking about an expert in Chinese art, or are we talking about an art expert who is from China? So if we look here, there's two perfectly plausible word groupings. You can parse the string in two different ways. You could say a Chinese art expert, which is an expert in Chinese art, or a Chinese art expert, an art expert who is from China. So what we can see here is all of these, Chinese art expert is itself a noun phrase. But then there's a constituent inside it, Chinese art, which actually acts as what's called a specifier. Okay, that kind of describes expert a little bit more. And that is Chinese art expert, an expert of Chinese art. The next one, Chinese art expert. Art expert is a constituent because that's what it is. That's a noun, art expert, compound noun. Okay, and the person happens to be Chinese, and Chinese is the adjective that describes the noun, art expert. Let's keep going. She stopped the train with the red flag. So what exactly does that mean? We've got she stopped the train, that much we get, but with the red flag. So are we talking about she stopped the train that has a red flag on it? Or are we talking about she used a red flag to stop the train? Again, these are these ambiguous sentences. Constituents are groups of words that act as a coherent unit within the sentence. So if we look at, she stopped the train with the red flag, all of that is a noun phrase. The train with the red flag, it describes the noun. You've got the train followed by a prepositional phrase with the red flag, and all of that is part of a larger noun phrase. She stopped the train with the red flag. In other words, she used the red flag to stop the train. Then you've got the train as the direct object, and then you've got with the red flag as a prepositional phrase separate from it. If you look carefully at these, you could see in the first one, she stopped the train with the red flag. This is all inside one constituent. If you look at, she stopped the train with the red flag, in other words, she used the red flag to stop the train, you've got two separate constituents, the train and with the red flag. So here's a question. How do you know exactly what the constituents are? I mean, you sort of have a sense of it in meaning. Context is going to tell you something. I mean, if we're talking about a train that has a red flag on it, then, and you say she stopped the train with the red flag, then you probably know which one it is. But if we're looking at just independent sentences without context, we kind of need to be able to disambiguate, is the term, to make them unambiguous and decide what are the constituents that we're dealing with. And that's important in order to figure out what the structure is inside, because the point of syntax is to discover the internal structure of a sentence. So, if we move the phrase with the red flag to the beginning of the sentence, then we know that there's only one interpretation. With the red flag, she stopped the train. So we know that we're talking about the first image here of the woman waving the red flag. She stopped the train using the red flag, by using the red flag. Okay? So we know what the correct answer is. With the red flag, she stopped the train. Another test would be the movement test. So usually elements of the same constituent should be kept together. So that's actually what we just did. You move a set of words and the resulting sentence still sounds okay. You've preserved the constituency. If it sounds weird, then we've not gotten the constituents right. Okay. If you separate the elements that belong to the same constituent, the results will sound bad. So let's take a look here. So we've got, they ran out of the house. So the question here is, what is the constituent? If we say that it's just the verb followed by a prepositional phrase, out of the house, then we know we can move out of the house to the front and say, out of the house they ran. Let's look at they ran out of money. Well, we don't have a verb ran and followed by a prepositional phrase out of money. Because if you change it, you say out of money they ran. That sounds really weird. Okay, Yoda might be saying it, but we're not dealing with that. Normal people would not say out of money they ran. Okay? You could say money they ran out of. Okay? You could say money they ran out of. Because that would keep the constituent ran out of. Okay, so clearly to run out of something, run out of is a verb, and run is a verb, and they have slightly different meanings. Okay, another test of constituency is the replacement test. So generally a single constituent can be replaced by a single word. They ran out of the house. They ran where? Okay, they ran into a problem. They ran where? No. They ran, what did they run into? Now, again, keep in mind, to run into a problem is more metaphoric than they ran out of the house. That's the verb to run. Okay? Run into is something different. Okay? It's more metaphoric. So you could replace, for instance, they ran into a problem with they encountered a problem. Okay? And that is one test of constituency. Okay? You could say, for instance, they ran into a problem. They ran where? You can't say ran. You could say they ran into it. and then you would keep run into as a constituent, and then you could replace a problem with it. They ran into it. You can't, they ran out of it, would sound a little bit odd. The implication would be that not they're exiting the house, but rather that somehow there was not enough house, which I guess could make sense, but okay. Another test is the coordination test. So only constituents of equivalent structure can be joined by a coordinate structure. So you could say they ran out of the house and down the street. Out of the house, down the street, okay? You can't say they ran out of money and up a huge bill, because the verb is really to run out of, and then money would be what the object is, okay? You could say they ran out of money and filed for bankruptcy, because then you've got a verb phrase and a verb phrase. They ran out of the house and down the street, because then you've got prepositional phrase and prepositional phrase. But run out of is actually a verb chunk, okay? And you can't really break it up. And that is it for constituents. So as speakers of a language, you have a sense of what constituents are, but it's interesting and fun to look at these different things and see the internal structure of language. It's way more complicated than we thought.